All right, you sick fucks, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into this whole EJeanCarroll and Donald Trump shitstorm.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
We're talking sexual assault accusations, address with a mysterious DNA-stained defamation lawsuits, and of course Trump throwing insults like it's a goddamn ticker tape parade.
It's a story that really captures that whole Trump chaos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a total shit show.
Yeah.
So let's just cut the crap and get right to it.
Yeah.
EJeanCarroll, this advice columnist, accused Trump of raping her.
Back in the 90s.
Yeah, back in the 90s. In a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room, no less.
Yeah.
And Trump, being the narcissistic prick we all know and love,
Of course.
denied everything.
And not just denied it, he went on the offensive,
Oh, he loves that.
calling her a liar, a whack job,
Oh, God.
and even claimed she wasn't his type.
Oh, yeah, the not my type defense classic, which is hilarious because remember that photo of Carroll with Trump back in '87?
With Ivana?
Yeah, the one where he's standing there with Ivana, his wife at the time.
Oh, right.
During a deposition, Trump was shown that picture, and get this, he mistook Carroll for his second wife, Marla Maples.
Oh, my God.
Can you believe that shit?
What a blunder. I mean, talk about a
I'm so-
Freudian slip.
Seriously.
And it's so much for her not being his type, right?
Dumb ass.
Ah.
Okay, so this whole thing obviously blew up, and they ended up going to court.
Twice.
Not once, but twice.
2 lawsuits.
Tell me everything.
All right, so the first lawsuit filed in 2019 was for defamation,
Okay.
focusing on Trump's initial denials, and then the second one filed in 2022.
So they waited a few years for that one.
Yeah, they added a battery claim under the Adult Survivors Act.
What is that?
That's a law that allows victims of sexual assault to sue even after the statute of limitations has passed.
Oh, wow. So they were like, we're going to get this motherfucker for every lie he's ever told.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, smart move. So tell me more about these trials. What went down?
All right, so the first trial was a total shit show.
As expected.
It centered around the sexual assault accusation and the defamation claims. And one of the key pieces of evidence that came up was the infamous Access Hollywood tape,
Oh, God.
where Trump brags about grabbing women by the pussy,
Classic Trump thinking he's God's gift to women.
as always.
Ugh. But wait, didn't Trump offer his DNA for testing at some point?
He did.
Wouldn't that have, like, cleared things up?
Well, he offered it way too late in the game, and the judge saw right through that bullshit.
Yeah.
Called it a delay tactic.
Of course.
You
Plus,
know?
even if his DNA was on her dress, it wouldn't definitively prove rape, right?
Right.
Okay, fair enough. So what was the verdict in this first trial? Did they actually find Trump guilty of rape?
Well, it's complicated. The jury found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation,
Okay.
but not for rape as it was defined in New York law at the time.
So legally it wasn't considered rape.
Not at the time.
Gotcha. But come on, we all know what went down.
Right.
They did award Carroll $5 million in damages, though.
They did. $5 million.
That's got to sting. Even for a rich prick like Trump. Okay, so what about the second lawsuit? What was the focus there?
The second lawsuit zeroed in on those 2019 statements from Trump,
Uh-huh.
which the judge had already ruled were defamatory.
Oh, so they were using that against him again.
Yeah.
Right.
And, they were flat out lies. The jury slapped Trump with another $83.3 million in damages.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So almost $90 million for being a lying, abusive asshole? I love it.
It was a pretty big blow to him legally and financially.
Good.
But of course, Trump being Trump, he appealed both verdicts.
Shocker.
Yeah.
That guy never takes responsibility for anything.
Never.
But before we get into those appeals,
Mhm.
let's not forget about that whole ABC News defamation settlement. Remember that clusterfuck?
Ah, yes. George Stephanopoulos falsely stated on air that the jury found Trump liable for rape.
Oh, right.
And Trump being the litigious asshole that he is sued.
Naturally.
And ABC News ended up settling for a whopping $16 million,
What?
which included a public apology.
Are you serious? Talk about adding insult to injury. First, he loses 2 lawsuits and then gets a massive payout from a news organization for misreporting the verdict.
Wow.
What a world.
There's speculation that ABC News settled so quickly to avoid handing over potentially damaging information during the discovery process.
So they paid to keep their dirty laundry hidden.
It's possible.
Typical media bullshit.
Ah.
But getting back to the actual trials, I'm still a little confused about the whole rape versus sexual abuse distinction.
Yeah.
Why didn't the jury find him liable for rape?
Well, at the time, New York's rape law was incredibly specific.
Okay.
It only covered instances of forceful penetration with a penis.
Oh.
And Carroll's testimony described Trump digitally penetrating her before using his penis.
So legally, it wasn't considered rape.
Right.
But let's be real, he forced himself on her.
Yes.
What a piece of shit.
It's important to remember that legal definitions don't always capture the full reality of a situation.
True. The jury did find Trump liable for sexual abuse, though,
Yes.
which is still a serious offense. And it's not like the jury was full of Trump-loving idiots. They saw through his bullshit and held him accountable.
Yeah, they did. But even though the jury didn't technically find him liable for rape under New York law, Judge Kaplan, who presided over the first trial, later clarified that they did find him guilty of rape based on the common understanding of the word.
Okay, well, that's something, at least. Let's cut the legal jargon for a second. Didn't Carroll say in an interview that she didn't consider it rape?
She did.
That she saw it as a fight?
Yeah, she used that word.
What was that all about?
Well, she later explained that she used the word fight because the word rape for her carried too many unwanted sexual connotations.
I see.
She stated that what Trump did to her wasn't sexual, it just hurt.
Yeah, I get that. It's her story, her experience. She gets to choose how to describe it. But let's not forget about Trump's reaction to all this. He went on a full-blown rampage.
Oh, he did, didn't he?
Absolutely. He denied everything, called her names, said she was making it up to sell her book.
Oh, God.
He even went after her lawyer, Roberta Kaplan. Typical Trump, always playing the victim.
Yeah.
But luckily in this case, the juries weren't buying it. They saw through his lies and held him accountable.
They did. It was a major victory for Carroll.
For sure.
And a powerful message to other victims of sexual assault that they can be heard and that justice is possible.
I love that. Speaking of justice, how the hell did Carroll manage to sue Trump for something that happened decades ago?
Right.
Isn't there a statute of limitations for that kind of thing?
There is, but that's where the Adult Survivors Act comes in. This law passed in New York in 2022 opened a one-year window for survivors of sexual assault to file civil lawsuits against their abusers, regardless of how long ago the assault occurred.
So even if the assault happened like decades ago, like in Carroll's case, victims could finally get their day in court.
Exactly. It was a game changer for so many survivors who had been denied justice because of these arbitrary time limits.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about seeking justice for past wrongs, It sent a powerful message that sexual abuse is never okay, and that perpetrators will be held accountable no matter how much time has passed.
That's huge. It gives hope to survivors who might have thought it was too late to do anything about what happened to them.
Absolutely. It acknowledges that trauma can take time to process and that many survivors might not be ready or feel safe to come forward immediately.
It's like saying there's no expiration date on pain, and justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied.
Precisely. And it validates the experiences of survivors. But of course, Trump and his legal team weren't thrilled about this new law.
Oh, I bet.
They tried every trick in the book to get the second lawsuit dismissed. They argued that the Adult Survivors Act was unconstitutional and violated Trump's due process rights.
Typical Trump. Always trying to weasel his way out of taking responsibility.
Right. But the judge wasn't buying it. He upheld the law's constitutionality and allowed Carroll's case to move forward.
Good. Fuck that noise. But was this just some weird New York thing, or were other states passing similar laws?
It wasn't just New York. Around that time, there was a wave of similar legislation being passed across the country. California, New Jersey, North Carolina all enacted their own versions of the Adult Survivors Act.
So it was part of a national movement.
Exactly. It was a sign that the legal landscape was finally starting to shift in favor of survivors and holding abusers accountable.
And Trump just happened to get caught in the tide.
He sure did. And that's why this case is so significant. It's not just about EJeanCarroll and Donald Trump. It's about a cultural reckoning with sexual assault and the abuse of power.
Damn, that's deep. Okay, so we've covered the laws, the lawsuits, the settlement. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the trials themselves.
Yeah.
What were some of the craziest moments?
Well, in the first trial, things got really intense when Carroll took the stand.
Oh, yeah.
She testified about the assault in graphic detail. She described how Trump slammed her against the wall in that Bergdorf Goodman dressing room, pulled down her tights, and raped her.
Jesus. It must have been brutal to hear that firsthand. I can't imagine the courage it took for her to relive that experience in front of a courtroom full of strangers.
It was powerful testimony, and it clearly resonated with the jury. But Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, tried to discredit her.
Oh, God, here we go.
She questioned why Carroll didn't scream or report the assault to the police at the time.
Classic victim-blaming bullshit. As if every sexual assault victim reacts the same way.
Exactly. Carroll shot back saying she was too much in panic to scream, and that she didn't go public sooner because she was terrified of Trump's retaliation.
Makes sense.
She also said that seeing other women come forward during the Me Too movement gave her the courage to finally speak out.
Yeah, the Me Too movement gave so many women a platform, and the support they needed to share their stories.
Yeah.
It was a turning point in how we view and talk about sexual assault.
Absolutely. And Carroll's case became a symbol of that movement. But it wasn't just her testimony that was compelling. 2 of her friends also testified, corroborating her account. They said that Carroll had confided in them about the assault shortly after it happened.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It completely contradicts Trump's claim that she was making it all up.
Exactly. It's like, okay, so this wasn't some repressed memory or a fabrication. She actually told people about this years ago.
Damn. But of course, Trump's lawyers didn't give up that easily. Did they try to dig up dirt on Carroll? Like try to discredit her?
Oh, they tried. They even brought up the fact that she had once joked on social media about having sex with Trump for money.
Seriously?
They were trying to imply that she was some kind of attention seeker.
Give me a fucking break. People joke about all sorts of shit. It doesn't mean they actually want to do it.
Exactly. It was a pathetic attempt to discredit her and make it seem like she wasn't a real victim.
Right.
But the jury wasn't buying it.
Thank God they saw through that slut-shaming bullshit.
Right. And it's important to note that Carroll wasn't the only woman who accused Trump of sexual misconduct. Remember, Jessica Leeds and Natasha Stoyanov?
Vaguely refresh my memory.
Leeds testified that Trump groped her on a plane back in the 70s, and Stoyanov said he forcibly kissed her at Mar-a-Lago in 2005.
Oh, right.
Their testimonies were crucial because they showed a pattern of predatory behavior towards women.
So it wasn't just Carroll. We've got multiple women coming forward with similar stories about Trump being a handsy creep.
Exactly. It establishes a pattern of behavior. And then, of course, there was the Access Hollywood tape.
Ah, yes, the infamous grab 'em by the pussy tape.
That recording was played for the jury in both trials. It was a bombshell piece of evidence that further corroborated the women's accounts and exposed Trump's deeply ingrained misogyny.
Trump must have been pissed that they kept bringing up that tape. It's like a permanent stain on his already shitty reputation.
I'm sure he wasn't happy about it. His lawyers tried to downplay it, saying it was just locker room talk.
Oh, come on.
But no one was buying that excuse.
Yeah, right. Locker room talk. More like confessions of a sexual predator.
Exactly. And the juries clearly agreed. So in the first trial, they found Trump liable for both sexual abuse and defamation, awarding Carroll $5 million in damages.
$5 million for being a total piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. What about the second trial?
The second trial focused on Trump's statements on Truth Social after the first verdict, where he continued to attack Carroll and deny any wrongdoing.
He just couldn't shut his fucking mouth, could he?
Nope. He called her a whack job and a con artist. He also doubled down on his claim that he had never met Carroll, which was clearly a lie given that photo from the 80s.
So basically he lied again.
Yeah.
The jury called him out on it.
Exactly. The second trial didn't have as many witnesses, but the focus shifted to the impact of Trump's defamatory statements on Carroll's life and career. Her lawyer argued that his attacks caused her emotional distress, damaged her reputation, and even led to death threats.
Death threats? That's fucked up. It's scary how people get so riled up over this shit.
It speaks to the power of Trump's rhetoric and the incredibly toxic political climate we're living in. But even with those threats, Carroll refused to be silenced. She stood her ground and testified that she wouldn't back down. She was determined to hold Trump accountable.
That's badass. I have so much respect for her.
And her courage paid off. The jury in the second trial hit Trump with an additional $83.3 million in damages.
Damn. So in total, he's out almost $90 million for being a lying, abusive asshole. That's what I call poetic justice.
It's a powerful message that even someone as wealthy and powerful as Trump can't escape accountability for their actions.
So 2 trials, 2 verdicts against Trump. But knowing that asshole, I doubt he just accepted defeat gracefully.
You're absolutely right. He appealed both verdicts, tried to get the damages reduced, and even filed a countersuit against Carroll for defamation after she said on CNN that he did rape her, even though the jury didn't technically find him liable for rape in the first trial.
Wait, he sued her for defamation after he was found liable for defamation. This guy's logic is as twisted as his hair.
It was a ridiculous move, and the judge thankfully dismissed the countersuit. He pointed out that Carroll's statement was essentially true based on the common understanding of rape, even if it didn't perfectly align with New York's narrow legal definition at the time.
The judge basically told him to fuck off. I love it.
And then, of course, there was that whole ABC News settlement. They ended up paying Trump $16 million because their anchor, George Stephanopoulos, falsely claimed on air that the jury had found Trump liable for rape.
It's like adding insult to injury. First, he loses the lawsuits, and then he gets a fat payout from a news organization for misreporting the verdict.
It was a strange twist in this whole saga. Some legal experts believe ABC News settled so quickly because they were afraid of what might come out during the discovery process.
So they basically paid to keep their skeletons in the closet.
It's definitely a possibility, but regardless of their reasoning, it was a big win for Trump, both financially and in terms of public perception.
Okay, so we've got two major lawsuits, a hefty defamation settlement, and Trump with a mountain of legal bills. It's enough to make your head spin. But I want to circle back to something that's been bugging me. The jury's decision in the first trial to find Trump liable for sexual abuse but not rape. I get that New York's rape law was pretty narrow at the time, but it still feels like a cop-out.
I understand your frustration. It's important to remember that the jury was working with a very specific legal definition of rape that didn't necessarily reflect the reality of Carroll's experience.
But shouldn't common sense have prevailed? It's clear that what Trump did was wrong, regardless of the legal technicalities.
You're right, and it's important to remember that legal definitions don't always encompass the full complexity of real-life situations. The jury found Trump liable for sexual abuse, which is still a serious offense. And Judge Kaplan later clarified that the jury did find Trump guilty of rape, based on the common definition of the word.
I guess that's something. It's just frustrating that the legal system sometimes fails to deliver true justice.
It's a reminder that the fight for justice doesn't end in the courtroom. It's about changing the culture, challenging power structures, and creating a society where victims feel safe to speak out and where abusers are held accountable.
You're right. We can't just rely on the courts to fix everything. We have to change the way we think and talk about these issues.
Exactly. The Carroll-Trump case highlights the limitations of the legal system, but also its potential for progress. It shows that even the most powerful men can be held accountable for their actions.
And hopefully it'll inspire other survivors to come forward and demand justice.
Speaking of inspiration, let's talk about the broader impact of this whole saga. How does it fit into the Me Too movement? How has it changed the conversation around sexual assault and accountability?
All right, so we spent the last two parts dissecting these lawsuits, marveling at Trump's fuck-ups. But let's get real for a minute. What does this whole Carroll Trump shit show actually mean in the grand scheme of things?
That's the big question, isn't it? You could argue that Carroll's victory was a monumental win for the Me Too movement. This wasn't just some random he said, she said case. We had a powerful man, a former fucking president, facing accusations from multiple women.
And let's be honest, Trump is basically the poster child for male entitlement. He thinks he can grab him by the pussy and get away with it.
Exactly. So for a jury to find him liable, not once, but twice, it sends a powerful message. Even the most powerful men aren't above the law.
It's like a giant middle finger to all those privileged assholes who thought they could silence their victims and get away with anything.
Precisely. And it shows the power of believing women. Carroll's case hinged on her testimony and the corroboration of her friends. The jury believed her, even when Trump and his lawyers tried to paint her as a liar and an opportunist.
It's a reminder that we shouldn't automatically dismiss women who come forward with these kinds of accusations. Too often their stories are ignored or they're accused of lying for attention or revenge.
You're right. And this case could encourage other survivors to come forward knowing that their voices matter, that they can be heard, and that justice is possible. Even when the accused is someone as powerful as Donald Trump.
It's like Carroll's victory cracked open the door to more accountability. It shows other victims that they're not alone and that they don't have to suffer in silence.
It offers a glimmer of hope in a system that often fails to protect and support survivors. But it's also important to recognize the limitations of the legal system, especially when it comes to sexual assault cases. Remember, even though Carroll testified that Trump raped her, the jury didn't technically find him liable for that specific charge.
Yeah, that whole distinction between rape and sexual abuse was confusing as hell. It felt like a legal technicality that let Trump off the hook, even though he clearly did something wrong.
It highlights the complexities of defining and prosecuting sexual assault cases. Legal definitions don't always align with the lived experiences of victims, and there are often gray areas that make it difficult to secure a clear-cut verdict.
It's frustrating. But I guess it's also a reminder that the fight for justice doesn't begin and end in the courtroom. It's about changing the culture, challenging those in power, and creating a society where victims feel safe to come forward and abusers are held accountable for their actions.
Exactly. The Carroll-Trump saga is a powerful reminder that change doesn't happen overnight. It's a long, messy process. But victories like Carroll show that progress is possible.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What can they do to keep this momentum going?
Well, first and foremost, believe survivors listen to their stories without judgment and offer support.
Don't be a dick. Got it. What else?
Challenge rape culture and misogyny wherever you see it. Call out sexist jokes and behavior and hold your friends and family accountable for their words and actions.
So basically, don't be a bystander. Speak up and shut that shit down.
And finally, support organizations and initiatives that are working to combat sexual violence and empower survivors. Donate your time or money or simply spread awareness about these issues.
All right, so the Leave Survivors challenge bullshit and support the good fight. I can get behind that.
It's not easy, but it's necessary if we want to create a world where these kinds of assaults don't happen, where victims feel empowered to come forward, and where justice is served.
Well, cheers to EJeanCarroll for her courage and her victory. And cheers to all the survivors out there fighting for their voices to be heard.
Cheers to that.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive into the wild world of EJeanCarroll and Donald Trump. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and don't let the assholes win.